Chapter 76. The Battering Ram. Ere quitting for the nonce the sperm whale's head, I would have you, as a sensible physiologist, simply, particularly remark on its front aspect, in all its compacted collectedness. I would have you investigate it now with the sole view of forming to yourself some unexaggerated intelligent estimate of whatever battering ram power may be lodged there. Here is a vital point, for you must either satisfactorily settle this matter with yourself or forever remain an infidel as to one of the most appalling but not less true events perhaps anywhere to be found in all recorded history. You observe that in ordinary swimming position of the sperm whale, the front of his head presents an almost wholly vertical plane to the water. You observe that the lower part of the front slopes considerably backward so as to furnish more of a retreat for the long socket which receives the boom-like lower jaw. You observe that the mouth is entirely under the head, much in the same way indeed as your own mouth were entirely under your chin. Moreover, you observe that the whale has no external nose, and that what nose he has, his spout hole, is on top of his head. You observe that his eyes and ears are at the sides of his head, nearly 1/3 of his entire length from the front. Wherefore you must now have perceived that the front of the sperm whale's head is a dead, blind wall, without a single organ or tender prominence of any sort whatsoever. Furthermore, you are now to consider that only in the extreme, lower, backward sloping part of the front of the head is there the slightest vestige of bone, and not till you get nearly 20 feet from the forehead do you come to a full cranial development. So that this whole enormous boneless mass is as one wad. Finally, though, as it were soon revealed, its contents partially comprise the most delicate oil. Yet you are now to be apprised of the nature of the substance which so impregnably invests all that apparent effeminacy. In some previous place I have described to you how the blubber wraps about the body of the whale as the rind wraps an orange. Just so with the head, but with this difference. About the head this envelope, though not so thick, is of boneless toughness, inestimable by any man who has not handled it. The severest pointed harpoon, the sharpest lance darted by the strongest human arm, impotently rebounds from it. It is though the forehead of the sperm whale were paved with horses' hooves. I do not think that any sensation lurks in it. Bethink yourself also of another thing. When two large loaded Indiamen chance to crowd and crush toward each other in the docks, what do the sailors do? Do they not suspend between them at the point of coming in contact any mere hard substance like iron or wood? No, they hold there a large round wad of tow and cork, enveloped in the thickest, toughest oxhide. That bravely uninjured takes the jam which would have snapped all their oaken handspikes and iron crowbars. By itself this sufficiently illustrates the obvious fact I drive at. By supplementary to this, it has hypothetically occurred to me that as ordinary fish possess what is called a swimming bladder in them, capable of at will of distension or contraction, as the sperm whale, as far as I know, has no such provision in him, considering too the otherwise inexplicable manner in which he now depresses his head altogether beneath the surface, and anon swims with it high elevated out of the water. Considering the unobstructed elasticity of this envelope, considered the unique interior of his head, it has hypothetically occurred to me, I say, that those mystical lung-celled honeycombs there may possibly have some hitherto unknown and unsuspected connection with the outer air, so as to be susceptible to atmospheric distension and contraction. If this be so, fancy the irresistibleness of that might, to which the most impalpable and destructive of all elements contributes. Now, mark, unerringly impelled this dead, impregnable, uninjurable wall and this most buoyant thing within. There swims by it all a mass of tremendous life, only to be adequately estimated as piled wood is, by the cord, and all obedient to one volition as the smallest insect. So that when I shall hereafter detail to you all the specialties and concentrations of potency everywhere lurking in this expansive monster, when shall I show you some of the more inconsiderable braining feats, I trust you will have renounced all ignorant incredulity, and be ready to abide by this, that though the sperm whales stove a passage through the Isthmus of Darien and mix the Atlantic with the Pacific, you would not elevate one hair of your eyebrow. For unless you own the whale, you are but a provincial and sentimentalist in truth. But clear truth is a thing for salamander giants only to encounter. How small the chances for the provincials, then! What befell the weakling youth lifting the dread goddess's veil at Lais? This is the end of chapter 76. So he describes the front of the sperm whale's head, where the spermaceti is, and so it's, as he said, there isn't much there besides, this huge kind of, it's called the melon, it's huge sort of lump of flesh. The eyes are back. There is no real bone. And he talks about Indiamen, which is a term for merchant ships that sail to India, because India was a popular trading destination, because India had spices and all sorts of other good stuff. So, you trade with India and you get the spices back. And anyway, so big ships going to India, and talked with two of them being next together side by side, and they'd be bumping into each other and possibly breaking things. They don't hold them apart with wood or iron or anything like that, because that would break. But they have a big leather bag stuffed with cork, which is tree bark, and tow, which is little bits of flax fiber. So here you have this bag kind of stuffed with stuff. It's cork, it's soft squishy thing, so it's like a stuffed pillow really, except it's stuffed kind of hard and it's made of leather, and they slap it between the two boats and the boats bounce off of each other. And if you see fenders for boats nowadays, they have these kind of inflated bottles, which it's plastic, so it gives, but it has air in it, so it compresses. And he's saying that, hey, the sperm whale's head is pretty much like this. It has this big, tough outer shell, and it's kind of squishy in the middle. He also suggests that it's used for ballast. So he talks about fish's swim bladders. So fish, inside of them have this swim bladder, which is it's an organ which is filled with air. And I'm not sure how the fish get the air in there, because it's not connected to anything, but it's a thing of air inside of the fish. And what this does is the fish have muscles around it so they can contract it. And when they contract around the swim bladder, their density increases and they become more dense than water and they go down. Or they stop contracting it, it becomes less dense and they start floating. That works until they get so deep that the swim bladder collapses in on itself and it just sinks to the bottom because they don't have enough pressure to open it up. And on the other hand, there are some fish that live so deep in the ocean, like deep abyssal depths, like a coelacanth type of thing, where their swim bladders are so pressurized that fish have been known to explode. Catch a fish several thousand feet down, you pull it up, all of a sudden you have a swim bladder which is pressurized for several thousand feet, all of a sudden having, no pressure on it essentially, because 1 atmosphere, what's 1 atmosphere compared to the 300 atmospheres you find at 1,000 feet? An atmosphere is 24 feet of water. Anyway, whatever the math works out to. So, you go down a couple thousand feet and you have this insane pressure. And you bring the fish up and the fish have been known to explode. So his theory is that the sperm whale can contract this and increase its density and dive. Now, scientists still to this day aren't sure about it. That's one of the theories they have about what the melon on the front of the sperm whale is for, because sperm whales do these insane deep dives. But, so, maybe there is something to that, though other people are saying, well, no, there's not quite enough change in the density to really make that work. It's probably just for sonar. But the thing is that this is an idea that he had 150 years ago and 175, 180 years ago that might actually be true. Cytologists are still not sure about what it's for, but it could be good for ramming things. It could be good for ballast. So who knows?